So thanks everyone for coming to How We Listen Live, the knowledge to move your music forward. So as usual, here's the agenda for today. I'm going to talk a bit about Byta for people who've never come before. Then I talk about how we listen so everybody understands what the goals around these events and the whole general how we listen idea. And then I do a couple announcements. And then the second part is our conversation with Saidah from Sonos. My name is Mark Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Byta. And as we were just talking about, I'm Canadian. I lived in the UK for a while, and then now I live in Stockholm, Sweden. And as I say to everyone and anybody I interview, it's always good to talk about your background so people can understand what your perspective is, how you see the world. It helps you be more critical, ultimately. So I started working in the music business in Canada at a small indie label in the mid-90s, so pre-internet. Then I moved to the UK. I worked in the A&R department at Creation Records, and which is one of the UK's most important indie labels. Then I left there and I worked at another label called Pop Tones, where I started doing radio promotion, which is trying to get artists on the radio in the UK. And then I left there and I started my own boutique radio and TV promotion company, which I did for about 14 years. And then around the time that I was doing radio and getting ready to move to Sweden, I started Byta. And so what is Byta? Byta is the platform that enables sending and receiving of digital audio in a clean, simple, and secure way, built for everyone working in music today. And what is Byta? Simply fast and secure audio sharing. But in practice, what does that mean? Well, Byta takes advantage of audiophiles' unique properties, of which we have identified three key ones. Metadata, so Byta reads and writes the information in audio files. So you upload a file to Byta, it extracts all the information embedded in the file, including WAV files, and presents it on the screen so you can confirm it and update it. We also focus on file formats and audio quality. So if you upload in one file format, you can share in another or share a stream only. So convert on the fly. Saves you having different versions of all your tracks in a Dropbox, for example. And then also streamability. Byta is the only platform that has fast yet secure streaming. It means you can't rip our links. And if anybody knows anything about security, stream ripping is the way people get access to your files that you don't want them to have. Long and short, we're experts in digital audio, and if you're interested in reading more, we released a white paper about just coming up on a year now, but all the information is still relevant. Jamie will throw a link in the chat. It just basically explains the way people in and around the music ecosystem send and receive digital audio. So there's a lot of insights in there that will help you understand of best ways to collaborate, or when you're reaching out to people, sharing your unreleased tracks, what people like, and some best practices for you. But our mission statement is it's not just about audio sharing. It's about to provide artists and their teams with the tools and the knowledge to move their careers forward. So how do we do that? Byta, as I said, the tool. But then also we realize that artists and their teams, they need not just tools for sharing audio, they need to understand all the background behind it, the context of how music discovery works and audio sharing in general. And that's why we came up with the idea for How We Listen. And so How We Listen started out maybe about just over 3 years ago as a set of standard, say 10, 12 questions, interview that we posted every week on our blog. And it just talked to people. We talked to people about how they find and listen and discover mostly new music, but music that's new to them. because everybody's discussion, everybody's story about digital audio and discovery is different. And this came out of the fact that we were very frustrated that, like surely all you all, would read about how Spotify would say, oh, all you need to do is get on a playlist. I was talking to an artist, quite a well-known artist, a couple of days ago, and they were saying, oh yeah, the advice I get is just get on a playlist and everything will be great. And everybody knows that that's not the case, but the narrative out there that the streaming platforms push is that that's the way it works, that's all you need to do. Or that you just put your music, upload your music, and suddenly the algorithm picks it up. And it's just not the case. There's tons that you need to do to make your music discoverable. So what I like to do every week, or sorry, every month, is highlight a couple of these interviews. And this one from Carrie from Music X Match says, I prefer to mindfully consume music. Buy an album, listen to it a few dozen times. It becomes something to cherish. It's hard to do that with streaming music. And that is completely true. It's so easy now. You've got access to every record, the celestial jukebox, as they call it. But being mindful about listening is a different experience. And so that's definitely something to think about, that certain people buy albums and they listen, be that physical or CDs or cassettes even, and what the listening experience is versus streaming. And then we also have another series which we launched probably, I guess, at the start of this year, called Method to My Music, which is more focused on artists and the recording process and the challenges around that, sharing audio, security, etc. And Samnuri from this band, they talk about how they had some demos very early on that got flipped to a public on SoundCloud. And this is classic. This happens all the time. Downloaded and published on YouTube before we ever released anything. That kind of sucked. So the deal here is, and this happens so often, that even this happens in major labels, where somebody flicks a switch by mistake, the audio is available to everyone when it shouldn't be. So no matter what platform you use, you need to have good processes in place. That's the last thing you want. But the key here is for some reason it was downloadable, which is pretty serious. So I can understand why they were super frustrated. And then now the third series we have is called Digital Dialogue, and I think we've done about 4 or 5 of these now. And so Digital Dialogue's a little bit different. It's an interview guest blog series written by friends, people that we've met all around. And these articles are to present readers with insights into challenges, successes, and passion topics in the day-to-day life of those working deep in digital. And a lot of the time it is people who work at certain companies are super passionate about what they do, and they're the best people to talk about these issues. And so Jamie will throw the link in the chat, but Kieran from Muso AI, who I believe got bought by SoundCloud. I think I have that right. But they write about why creators are key to improving the industry's metadata and how to get them to engage. So have a read of that. And there's a series of them on our blog that are all well worth reading. All super interesting people talking about super interesting things. And here's a good quote. We found, I'm going to have to move my little thing. Oh yeah, we moved the data visualization and the way we are translating all this credit activity into one place from every platform that has become a catalyst for great people to engage with their credits. So again, credits, all these kind of things, talking about the way it was with albums before the internet. Now, does everybody get credited correctly? It's all super important stuff to think about. And these problems are definitely not solved yet. So it's very fascinating to hear about what people's perspectives are on how it's going to look in the future. So then how we listen, I've explained, but what is how we listen live and what are we doing it? Basically, how we listen live is a more extended version of what the interview is like, where we sort of take a subject that we think is important and people who we think are good at talking and presenting interesting ideas, and just an entertaining discussion about something a bit more of a deep dive than you could get on text. And that's why we do it. We want people to get together. We love having people come and hang out together and ask questions and talk. We have a lot of people that pop by every month or listen to the links we send out or listen to it as a podcast or on YouTube. So we just wanted to make it a different way of presenting this kind of information in a deeper way than the original interviews. As I say every time, everybody who works on these events, no one gets paid. The guests don't get any money. We're all doing it because we think it's important, but we also donate a little money to Maytree in the UK, which is a house for people who are having suicidal thoughts, which, you know, it's not just in the UK, it's everywhere. Mental health is a big issue, and we always want to highlight it as much as we can. This is super important to me, important to our company, and should be important to you all if it isn't already. So screenshot this, take a look around, throw in some money if you want, but I'm sure there's an organization in your own area that deserves your attention. This is my website. This is where I have all my information. If you ever wanted to get a hold of me, I usually post blog posts, but I haven't done that lately, and I make some excuse every month. But that's if you need me. Facebook group, if you like to get information about what we're doing, you can do it this way. LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. But you know, this is just another place to get a hold of us. Our YouTube channel. Again, if you miss an event, you can sign up. You get the link. You get the link to the YouTube, and then eventually it goes up as a podcast. So you never have to be here, even though it's fun to do things live. But yeah, you can find these interviews basically everywhere, hopefully. And any questions, hit me up. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Add me. I'm happy to add you to expand your network. Anything anybody needs, drop me a line. Saidah, where are you now? Can I get you to... Ah, there you are. Hello.
Hi there.
Hello. Let me see. I've
Hi,
readjusted
everyone.
everything. Perfect. So let's start first. Where are you and what do you do? Would be a good start.
I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, and I work for a music technology products-based company called Sonos. Our global headquarters is in Santa Barbara, California, but we have offices all around the world.
And what do you do there? Because you were telling me that when we talked the first time, that you've got some new jobs. You wear many hats. Is that correct?
I do. I am now the as of right now, the executive producer of Sonos Radio, which is our newish platform that covers music discovery, and it's kind of our own streaming a streaming option within the app. We join if you have Sonos and you open up your app, we're there along with all of the other big players. We are right now the second most used app on the Sonos platform, behind the obvious big player. And then additionally, my job has now evolved that I am dipping back into global marketing for Sonos, and have a really interesting job title. It's the primary impact storyteller, which basically means I'm helping to create internal content at Sonos to help us talk about ourselves and learn a little bit more about our own mythos. So right now I'm working with all of the teams across the company to discover all the great work that they're doing, so I can tell that story internally, and then maybe if there is a great nugget and we want to share it with the greater world, we will.
That job sounds very 2022, but
It is. These storyteller jobs are very good. When they presented it to me, the option, because I was like, a storyteller. I was like, you mean like a court jester? I was like, it felt very
a court jester. That's very Middle Ages.
It felt it. Like when I got it, I was like, am I going to who am I telling stories to? But then I kind of did some digging and found out that in the tech world, this is a new job that seems to be kind of popping up, that companies want to make sure that their employees are engaged, they have full transparency, and also just that they know what their fellow colleagues are doing to help build a brand and build the company.
And when we asked you to come on to talk with us, you didn't have this job, but I think, funny enough, this fits even more what we want to discuss about, music discovery and all those things, because as much as I'm making a joke about the title, telling stories is what you need to do as an artist. And I think that's perfect. So I want to jump into that in a bit, but like I always like to do is I'm sort of curious to know how you ended up doing what you do now. So how did you say get into radio, and what was the story of getting into the music world?
I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, the heart of America, as they call it, dead in center. And I had two parents that were absolute music freaks. Like my mom grew up in Michigan, right next to Detroit. So she had that whole, like my mom grew alongside of some of the people that were big names in Motown. Like, so my mom literally knew a lot of that Motown gossip growing up, and she listened broadly. She listened to the Detroit sound, like it could go all the way from guitar to Motown. So my mom knew all of that. My dad was in the Midwest and grew up in Kansas City during the jazz era. So jazz was his particular favorite, but he listened to everything. And also, as I was telling Mark, I don't know if a lot of people know, Kansas City was a very interesting town for radio. Historically, having the really huge towers, music beamed across the country. We had one of the first rock stations in the country, one of the strongest R&B markets, a huge gospel market. I think second to like the Nashville kind of like literal Bible town, like that Nashville was and still is. And I just grew up listening to everything. My parents were very strict about academia and like, you got to stay in your books and do whatever. But remember record stores and going just where you would go on a Saturday and flip through the racks. My dad would take me and pull up a crate and let me get up and pretend to flip through the racks while he did it. And it just spurred a love of music that kind of has never gone away. I did, however, I had planned that I was going to go into academia. I have a degree in political science and political theory. And so for me, I'm always looking and analyzing and digging into the truth. And, that's how I listen to music as well. I go into wormholes. If I listen to one band, I start connecting to 5 or 6 others and like looking at the influences and what's interesting to me, and that note, or that sample, I know what song that came from. And for grad school, I came to New York City fully head on that I was going to take over the world of politics, do all of this stuff. It took exactly 1 year for me to realize, this is a 24-hour music town. I can go out and see 3 different shows a night and meet great people and hang out and talk to bands. And it was kind of a wrap that I went.
Are you telling me you didn't know this before? I'm skeptical.
I kind of did, but I thought I was going to make it. I was like, 2 years.
Maybe New York. Maybe New York. Why not? Maybe it might be nice there. Good time to focus on school. Yeah.
No, me crawling back into bed at 3 a.m. every night probably did not help, even though I just kept my grades up. But it probably didn't help the cause.
So, and then what sort of, when was this that you started dipping
I
your toe
moved
into the music world
always
in New
aging
York, that
myself.
is.
I
Oh,
moved in
sorry. Yeah,
No,
sorry,
that's
sorry.
okay. I
Yeah.
moved to New York in 98. And that was for grad school. And so I moved here in the era of when, that kind of resurgence of indie rock was popping up. Bands like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and TV on the Radio, the Strokes. I mean, I saw their first shows. I had a friend that grew up with them that took me to literally probably one of their first 5 shows. So just being there at that time was kind of magical. And, young people were going out and taking pride in the city, and this Brooklyn scene was popping up. So I'm sure that helped sway a lot of things as well.
Cool. And then, so when did you, like, how did you start working in and around music? Because it's one thing being a music fan and being a music obsessive, but then
Yeah.
how did you sort of get going? Because a lot of people who listen and tune in and stuff, they're always curious about how things sort of happen. And so it's always good to figure out how you made it into what you do now.
You know, I from a habit that I had in high school, I was obsessed with music magazines. Remember those?
What are those? No.
Yeah, I mean, I had subscriptions to every music magazine. I got a job at Barnes and Noble so I could afford to buy um foreign music magazines. Like I read like Enemy and ID and Dazed and a lot of those kind of really those kind of cool magazines back in the day. So I was literally on my downtime between classes flipping through a magazine, this magazine called Trace, and saw that there was an ad that a web 2.0, like, after the first Al Gore created, or so we all joke, the Al Gore created internet, there was web 2.0. Music and culture really shifted over to web 2.0 in the late 90s, where there were tons of like different sites that popped up, most notably Vice magazine, different things like that came on the internet. And there was a whole culture around kids getting involved in those sites. And so they were looking for an intern at this one called platform.net, which is now starting to be, I'm hearing a lot more people starting to reference it as a kind of a source of where they first learned about some of these New Yorkie bands that ended up blowing up. And so I ended up getting an internship / job there while I was in grad school, because I was just so bored with grad school that that was my first taste. That, as an intern, they were like, go out and hand flyers out this club, write a news story about this. I was in the news department, and I was responsible for writing 5 to 7 news stories a day. That's
Wow.
that's a big
Even back
turnaround.
then.
Yeah,
Even back
even back
then, that's a
then.
lot. Oh my
But it
God.
was great. My boss at the time was one of the founding editors of Interview magazine, and that's what he expected. And he literally, I'm looking at the pen that I have here. Remember the red pen edits? I
Yeah.
kept a pen like this forever because I've always been edited like that. That he used to just edit and when you wrote things down by hand or printed them out, he would just destroy them. But it made me a good writer. That if you're doing that and you're doing 7 pieces that are getting edited like that, you're going to learn some skills. So for me, music journalism was my entryway into kind of the music culture, that I was constantly looking for stories, interviewing people, doing phoners, like getting on the subway and going if there was a press junket. So, that was the way that I started out, just like using my skills from grad school, but learning about music that way.
And so, like, because I think I want to hear how you ended up at Sonos, but like that's how people learned about music back then, was via traditional. It sounds so dated, but it was via traditional media, so radio, be it magazines, either online or physical magazines. And that's a sort of a long way from the way it is now. But like, so how did you end up moving from that into doing radio and then being at Sonos?
Yeah, it's a pretty convoluted way. I've been in New York City. Next year will be 25 years. I've bounced around, and back in that day, it was considered not good to not specialize. But I always knew that I wanted, it really was. I was told by so many people, like, you need to pick a lane and you need to stay in it. And I was a
Huh.
person that was used to, and for better or for worse, bouncing around every 2 to 3 years. I just wanted to glean as much knowledge as I could from the music industry and the music world around me. So I bounced from, being my own freelancer where I was writing trend reports for Adidas about like music and culture. I did that for 4 years. I worked at a number of magazines, including The Fader, where I worked on creating like their like live and music experience at South by Southwest, the Fader Fort. Um, and then worked with a lot of clients. I was on the team that helped bring Spotify to America. Worked with people like Topshop. Adult Swim was a client of mine that I did their live events. And then I got a ping from a friend one day and was like, hey, I saw this really interesting job that I think could be for you, and it's at NPR. And I was like, I haven't done anything academic or music journaling in a long time. There's no way they're going to hire me.
And so, and sorry to interrupt, NPR, for people who don't live in the US, is
Oh,
National
thank you.
Public Radio, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is our biggest, I think, here in the States. And I know there are many affiliates globally of public media. And
Okay.
they 11 interviews later, I got hired to run their live events and digital platforms at NPR Music. So I was there for 5 years, working on a lot of really amazing projects and getting to, I mean, it's one of the greatest experiences I ever had as in working. And then 5 years in, I knew what I was doing every day at NPR, and it was very um American based. And I got a call from a recruiter that was like, we have a company that's looking for somebody to come in and work on global music. And I heard the word global, and that was it. Like, and that was Sonos. And I went in to work on their how they were translating their vision with their home products and how we could do something in a larger space, either events, activations, marketing. So I've been with Sonos now. This week makes it 6 years, which is
Wow.
crazy. Yeah.
So like, let's talk about this radio side of it, because I think what you mentioned about like growing up, this idea of a radio tower and everybody's listening, everybody's being beamed in and they're hearing everything. Like when I did radio in the UK, one of the most important things is that the reason UK radio was so influential was because everybody would hear whatever that record was at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And that's why these shared moments, these shared events, it's sort of different now. And what you're talking about, that radio tower when you were growing up, is the same thing. But now the radio you work in, is that the same as that, but online, or is it on demand?
It's on demand.
Okay.
We have it on the Sonos app as well as on a website, radiosonos.com, radio.sonos.com. So feel free to check it out. There's tons to listen to, and it's all for free. Typically we have it on our app and on different tiers, but everything there is for free. So
Jamie, can you throw the link? Sorry to interrupt. Jamie, can you throw the link in the chat so if people want to listen? Because that was one of my questions. So you don't have to have a Sonos to listen to the
radio.
Perfect.
And also we're on Mixcloud. If you look for Sonos on Mixcloud,
yeah,
we're there as well.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Yeah.
It is a little different. Growing up with radio, Kansas City was such a special market because we had, again, like some of the first rock, gospel R&B stations. Like I listen as an adult, and I think that Kansas City radio is better than New York City radio. I will never say that here in or with a New Yorker, but I do truly believe that Kansas City is something special. Also, we got in the beams from some of the larger universities in the Midwest, like KU, Kansas University. which has 75,000 students,
Wow.
has some of the best college radio stations in the world. I mean, the guy that ended up creating the college radio station that's well known out of that market is Robin Hilton from NPR's All Songs Considered, which
wow.
blew my mind when I joined on there, that I was like, you created the music that I grew up to. So it's really nuts. But with Sonos, I think that we're trying to get with that same ethos of with Sonos Radio, excuse me, of listening broadly, where you may not love the first song or the first channel that you hit upon, but you're going to find something there that piques your interest. You'll flip around, you'll listen. But I think that we want to inspire people, and that's where it comes from me, the way that I grew up listening, that I want people to listen deeply. I always say it's a very surprise and delight platform. I love that about radio, that even though, like you mentioned, Mark, which I thought that was very interesting at the top, that the way we used to listen is that, yeah, like one album would be the zeitgeist. There was Elton John or Fleetwood Mac, Rumors came out or something like that. Now I find that radio has really gone into the realm of letting people discover new things, and it's become a really effective discovery tool that I love to share.
And so, like, this sounds like a ridiculous question, but is on-demand radio popular? Like, is it called Cirrus? Like, I in Sweden, we don't have any of these things, but I hear about them all the time. And my mom listens to Sirius radio in the car. So, like,
Sirius, Pandora. Yeah, Pandora, I think, is if not Sirius, one of those two the largest on-demand kind of platform in the country. It's very serious business, and I think it's expanding widely. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is that they realize that people want to know and listen to what their favorite artists are listening to. So they have stations like from Bob Dylan, like that's an exclusive that they have from him. And they have stations from very famous people that kind of are talking about their influences and the stuff that's interesting. I mean, Iggy Pop has stations, and his stations do very, very well out there.
Well, he's got a show on Six Music in the UK,
oh, cool.
I think, which is a BBC station that's online. Which, funny enough, when it started, was ridiculed. They're like, an online station. This is a farce. And of course, now it nearly got shut down, and now it's super popular. But I think Iggy Pop's got a show on there too. So
yeah. So I think that there is a demand literally for that, and we've seen stats when we've looked at Sonos, and there's other people, obviously NPR, because their big business is drive time. Like NPR has, telling some of the behind the curtain secrets. We had stats about the different people that listened, and there's like things called like driveway moms. Like, they're the people that literally will not get out of their car until they hear the end of a segment. That really interests them. Oh, I'm totally one of them too. It's like, I've literally sat in my car, like if a segment is started or if I turn on to a show, I'll wait till it's over. Radio is still very important to the American drive time market. LA, you see it. Miami, you see it. Chicago. There are certain cities that this is a hub, and it is a standard. It will never change. And I think that now having that option to be able to bring either on demand through your stereo or through your phone, like plugging into your car, is absolutely necessary. It's going to be essential. Radio will never die. So.
But okay, so because this is super interesting to me, because being a radio plugger in the UK, getting songs on the radio, you'd go see a band play, you'd see them play that track that was played on the radio, and the crowd would react in a way that they just wouldn't react if they were only getting press and all that kind of thing. But now everybody's listening to, because this is the real discussion of music discovery, like what's changing and how are things different now than they were before. Like, what my question is like, what role does radio play? Like, in the sense that, do people like, what's the value now that you can listen to anything you want anytime? Is it that these stations are curating, they're putting things in a context, there's personalities listening? What do you think are the factors that make radio, that means that radio can still be as special as it used to be?
I think there's 100% an enduring love of kind of just having that person there wherever you are, in your home, in your car, that kind of, the nurturing kind of, somebody's with you. There is a commonality. I'm still really stuck on what you mentioned about that idea of like something that everybody listened to. And I think that that's evolved in a sort of way. Radio is still important. Think about when I get into an Uber, at least here in New York City, they're always blaring music. And that is a music discovery tool for me. I may not be on top of all of the new music in my work, like genres and things like that. But when I get into an Uber, and if I have to like go, like if they're driving the airport or something like that, I know all of the new songs within the, like, radio really sustains a lot of people, and it is a discovery tool. I also think that, with on-demand or streaming radio, it is about curation. People are coming to you to hear and align with what your personalities are saying, what your brand is saying, what you are curating. I think that curation is absolutely a huge part of why streaming radio and on-demand radio is doing well.
Like, so you're talking about being in a cab and stuff. Do you Shazam stuff all the time?
All the time. It was a joke this weekend. You can do this thing called auto Shazam where you hold the button down and it'll
Oh,
just
really?
record everything. And I was actually at a beauty shop getting my hair done, and it was a kind of a proto-punk station that was on. I kind of go to a punky hair salon, and every song that was on was so good. And I was talking to my hairstylist and I was like, Francis, everything's so good. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I don't even know most of these songs. This is a new station she must have put on. And we just sat there and watched the songs trickle onto my phone as they were going on to Shazam. But I'm a notorious Shazammer at bars, venues. I'm that embarrassing girl. My friends will be like, put your arm down. I'm always the arm up, like Shazamming songs. I have no shame about it. None.
So I had no idea that there's an auto Shazam feature, but I remember distinctly being in the pub when I lived in London, and somebody was holding up their phone, and I'm like, what are you doing? This is, and didn't you have to pay per credit to do it or something? It was something ridiculous.
No, here it's no. And actually, what's even nice, it makes a playlist for you of all your Shazam. So it's even, for me, it's an extraordinary music discovery tool. I also come out of that world of, I did have shame earlier because I come out of the world of clubs and DJs and whatnot, and that's not very cool to like go up and be like, what are you playing? What song is that? So I used to be a discreet Shazammer. Now it's, if I need to know the song, the arm is up. The arm is up.
You've moved from a discreet Shazammer to a no shame Shazammer.
Yeah.
Is that in tandem with getting older that you're more comfortable with yourself now?
Yeah, then also I think it is because of part of my job. It's like my job is knowing about tracks, and I curate an entire station called Sonos Sound System that is about music discovery and surprise and delights and rare music and things like that. So if I hear something that's good, I want it to go on that station immediately.
Okay, so let's talk about these stations you have now. So your role is you coordinate all the different shows, or what explain your role a bit more, because I think the reason I think this is interesting for someone who's an artist manager or an artist or whatever is that understanding how the perspective of what the goal of the radio stations are help artists understand how they can contribute with their own music. So that's why I'm sort of curious.
So with Sonos Radio, I work on about, an average of 12 to 13 owned and operated stations, which we classified, owned and operated as new and original content. So I work with 13 different show hosts that bring their perspectives on interesting shows. Like, for example, we have a show called Imaginary Soundtracks that I work with a guy named Eric, who is a music supervisor. He's put music in probably some of the best known, best loved commercials over the past 15 years. He's a member of the music curators board or music supervisors board that's out there. And he invites people that put music on the TV shows and movies that we love. Like, he brought on the woman who does Euphoria, the folks that do let's see, I'm like tons of the shows for HBO, Netflix, brought on the woman who does all the music for Quentin Tarantino's movies. It's a really interesting show. So it's
And he interviews them.
Yeah, it's a
So
great
like
show.
anybody who's listening, I totally didn't know about that. But like, we had someone on from one of the publishers about sync and stuff. And it was one of our most popular events because people are obsessed by how do you get on. And I think it's the dark arts. I don't understand anything about sync. So there's a show where people talk. So what do they talk about? How they found the music or why they like it?
Talk about their path, just like kind of what we're doing here, like
wow.
like how they discovered music, what they do when they work with their co-collaborators, and then talk about what they listen to in their real life. And then they provide in like about a 45-minute playlist that we play, so you can hear some of their references, influences,
Wow.
current likes, things that they put in movies, anything, just whatever spurs their desire.
Huh. Wow. I had no idea. So tell us about a couple more of the other shows you've got.
Yeah, we have one that I'm very proud of, and this is one that on a lot of levels came first year out of the gate, got nominated alongside some pretty heavy hitter shows for a Webby Award called Black is Black, with that's hosted by DJ Lindsay Caldwell. She's pretty much a legend in the industry. She started she was Atlanta's first drum and bass DJ. She was Prince's DJ here in New York.
Wow.
She curated a bunch of really well-known shows here in New York, and she's just known for DJing like pretty fabulous parties. But her show is a very deep dive into the Black diaspora of music. So, for example, she did an episode about why Jamaicans love country music and easy listening. If you didn't know, like, because Jamaica shut down when Kenny Rogers died, they shut down for like a week because he was a god there. Like,
I had no idea.
country music in Jamaica is no joke. And like also Celine Dion, when she goes there, she sells out like 90,000 stadiums. Like,
so Celine Dion is big in Jamaica.
Absolutely. She's like, you put her on a lineup, it sells out in like 5 seconds. And so she did a whole show about the influence of country music, easy listening, yacht rock on Jamaican music and those really great covers. So she did like a 45-minute mix of kind of like all these great Jamaican covers of songs. I'll put that. I've been putting the names of these shows in the chat.
Wow.
And so, another show that we have is Women in Sound, where we took the Women in Sound zine, which is this little zine that's produced here in New York City by two women studio engineers, where they actually talk to their peers about being women engineers in the business or women music makers. We actually did one episode about the only female violin maker in the United States. And they also talked to everyone from, they did so many, Japanese Breakfast, about how she produces all of her own music. But we get in there and kind of do these really niche, structured, wormhole-y kind of shows where you're getting knowledge, but then I've asked all of them to base it in music. So there's always a playlist that you can listen and refer to afterwards. That to me is super important. And that's how I learned about music, and I loved growing up. And I just want to put that out there for people that, again, like, you may not love everything that you hear, but you may hear one song off of that mix that's going to shoot you off in that direction. Or you're like, hey, I didn't know that, David Bowie worked on that. Luther Vandross was David Bowie's first big backup singer that became a huge star. Wow, that's interesting. Let me listen to like Luther Vandross in a new, different way now. So just love to kind of do an interesting roster of shows that make people think about their music while they're listening.
And so, like, before we go on to, because I want to talk about what we were chatting about yesterday, about this idea of the way moving away from that radio tower into a world where there's no single focus by one thing. But for artists and stuff, like in the UK, when you were trying to get your music on the radio, you would go to producers, you would go to, especially the BBC, you would go to, the first ever How We Listen Live was with Hugh Stevens, who's a radio. Oh yeah, good. Yeah. You know who he is. So he talked about how, like, you sort of get in touch with people. But how do you, because you sort of sit, like at a high level across all these shows, like, how do you find that people who produce these shows and present these shows, how do they find out about the music they put in the shows? From your experience, do you have any tips for artists or artist managers? Because let's face it, they're not going to be able to contact all these shows. Like, how do you make yourself available so people learn about you if you're a newer artist, so you get played? Because if you're doing wormhole type stuff, you're going to be interested in different newer stuff. So what do you have any tips or insights for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, it is tough that not everybody is 100% accessible about accepting new music, but we've been pretty good at Sonos, that we have like an email where people can submit things, and we go through it and we listen to it. I think I took that from the Bob, again, a lot of NPR music sort of things. I took it from the Bob Boilen School of Music. Bob Boilen listens to everything that comes into him. He thinks that it's important that if somebody took the time to put it in the mail to them and send it to them, he owes it at least to give them one or two songs to listen to. And I've always taken that to heart, because I saw that he loves music to such a degree that, I will give, if something comes to me, I'm going to give it a couple listens to see what I can glean out of it. And, again, not everything's my cup of tea, but if it is, that works, and that's great. Bandcamp, we're big Bandcamp fans. Like, we surprisingly scroll through Bandcamp quite a bit.
Wow, okay, that's a good tip.
To check things out. It's a great platform for artists to be make their own money, get paid equitably, put out a great product, try things creatively. They get to make merch, they get to do these things, they can take in and flow as they like. I do find that Twitter and YouTube are great sources of new music. People really do put music up there that's great. The younger generation, this whole movement towards TikTok music and discovering music through TikTok, that is real. There's been not a ton that has come off of there for me, but the ones that have, it's mind-blowing that there's a lot of great music out there. I just think that there's so many different places in the wind, but I wouldn't begrudge the old school method of like sending it out to people. Just see what you never know. Hits or misses. It's the worst they can say is, no, this isn't for me, but thank you for sending it. Or, sadly, some people don't respond, but you might get lucky and somebody might be like, can you send me more? Or do you have anything like this? It never hurts to listen.
And I'm gonna guess that it's important for people to do research, as in, don't send someone who loves metal music a jazz record. Is that, like, does it pay to do research?
Absolutely, it really does pay to do your research. Yeah, I think that yeah, don't send it to somebody who's going to be absolutely off type to you. But if you're reading and you like somebody's work, or you like their Twitter feed, or you like their Instagram, if you approach somebody in a very respectful, non-pushy sort of way, like saying, don't email them 4 times a day, don't email
Yeah.
them like 4 times a week even. But if you're just like, hey, I've got something, I would love to leave this with you. If it works for you, that's great. I've had people drop me in my DMs, and I'm like, that is a respectful sort of way. They don't bother me. They just are like, I'm sharing this with you. I hope it helps. But yeah, match up and do your research on where you think your outlets and your potential places of being posted or noticed can mesh.
I call it the art of the nudge.
The art of the
Everybody's going to learn how to nudge effectively. You know what I mean? Like that. Hey, so just 2 quick questions. Somebody mentioned they can't find the Sonos email address that you mentioned. So if you could throw that in the chat at your leisure.
Yeah, let
Then,
me look at that. If not, I'll email it to you guys, and maybe you could distribute it
okay,
like the
sure,
after.
great.
But I'll look while I'm on here.
And then someone was asking, like, do you care about followers and all that? Like, because, you know, say for example, certain stations at the BBC, they're very concerned about, you know, social profiles. I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but what's your take on that? Is it we like it, we're going to give it, we're going to play it, you know? What's your take?
Um, I think, for obviously our prime time stations, I think that some of the curators that work with Sonos, because the other thing is Sonos is human curated, which is one of the big differences compared to a lot of the other streamers. I think that for some of the prime stations, like obviously country hits and some of that, obviously there's a bigger market, but there's a lot of discovery channels that we have. I'm not hung up on followers. I am a fan of just good music, things that sound good to me. My friends have told me, they're like, there's a tone that I like, they know that they hear this song that I'm like gonna be like, oh, I like that. But it's interesting. I'm not hung up on it, but unfortunately I could tell with some other outlets, I can imagine that numbers do matter to them and followers, but I think you just have to find your right niche.
And then maybe I guess the other tip is that, like, that you need to find those stations that are less concerned about followers and more into their gut to build up your profile, and then you go to the ones that are more concerned about followers when you've got some followers. Is that?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think so. And then sharing on platforms, I, I've been slow to that. I'm still into those music discovery tools about I am a person that likes that's just maybe a nerdy point for me, that I do like connecting those dots between things. But I could see that, obviously with somewhere like TikTok, that is very important. That
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you've got X number of followers and you've had this, and it hit on Spotify, and Spotify, you picked up people. I think you just do need to match with your proper outlet.
But I've always thought, my gut has always been that people that are worried about numbers are ones that are unsure of their taste. Do you know what I mean? Like
Very much so.
the people that are less worried about numbers are the ones that are most confident in their ears. And people like, say, Steve Lamacq, John Peel, Hugh Stevens in the UK, they don't need numbers because they trust what they
Yeah.
know. And basically that's what you're saying. It's like, I like doing all this research. I know what I like. I don't need someone to tell me, because if I hear something that's good, maybe they don't have any numbers because no one knows about them yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And trusting your ear, I think, is really, really important. One of those tools that's really interesting to me is maybe I've heard from other people, maybe researching people that are, the folks who make playlists that end up being put on different platforms. There's like actually folks out there at like different outlets and different magazines, different websites and blogs that make like monthly playlists, weekly playlists, whatnot. Submitting music for those is a good idea. I know that that's one of those little tools that advertising agencies do, that they will sometimes test out music through playlists. So sometimes submitting to playlists to get to a larger audience. I shouldn't have said that. That's something I know that some of my ad friends definitely sometimes test music through playlists to see if it works. And if people like get back to them about, oh, that was interesting. That's a cool song that you kind of included there, or whatnot. But yeah, I
But
think that
that's super. Sorry to interrupt, but that's super interesting because I really dislike this idea that people talk about playlists are the key to becoming popular. But what you're saying is that playlists can actually offer some context, so that, like, it's not the be all and end all, but if you're seeping into the
yeah.
you know, just dipping your toes in the water, it helps to build a little context that you might not have previously. And that I never thought of it that way. That's super interesting.
Yeah, and using it as a test, I think, being a test case is not bad all of the time. Like,
Yeah,
it definitely lets for ones I listen to, it lets me hear like what my ear is liking, maybe coming out of new music, maybe coming out of different sorts of global music, new rock. We had a show called Famous Last Words that was hosted by this woman Lorraine, who was doing she wanted a very John Peel-esque show, that she wanted to do everything from DIY gutter punk all the way up to like kind of new flashy stuff signed by labels, and everybody just sent stuff into her, and it just was about what pinged her ear. She would add it into her playlist, and she was surprised that like different magazines and outlets would hit her up being like, how'd you hear about this band? Like, this is interesting. Can you connect me with them? It never hurts being a tester case, like, in getting
yeah.
involved in the tester case.
And that sort of moves me over to this next thing I wanted to talk about, which I think was the most interesting part of what we discussed yesterday. This is this idea that if we go back to the sort of the radio tower situation, that there was a very limited amount of slots to get played on the radio. And if you got played, that was great, right? And a lot of people heard it, especially this is the way it worked in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But now the situation is that there's so many outlets, so many different places, it's hard to have an impact. But the positive side of that is that if you're a listener, you can find it's much easier, I think, to find your community online, find music that reflects who you are, versus back then that sometimes you didn't have access to all the music. And so tell me about your thoughts on that, how it's changed from, say, when you grew up to now, and how it's like, I don't want to use the word diversity because music's always been diverse, but that diversity is maybe more accessible. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I always say that the internet definitely changed, and it might have even helped to bring along the kind of the dissolution of not fan clubs, but like true fan bases, not based like in kind of like the hype of somebody. But I noticed a big difference from how I listened. I felt, and oh my God, I'm pulling out the old lady cane and shaking in the air, that I felt like I did the work when I was younger, that I bought the music magazines. I read all of the articles in Rolling Stone and all of these different outlets. I went to record stores with my dad to buy my cube of tapes to record the radio. I feel like there was this sort of effort and work put into becoming a serious music listener and being
Yeah.
a music fan. Now, and for better or for worse, I think it's great that people are listening to a lot of music, but it is easy. The internet is a jukebox. You can listen to whatever you want at the drop of, like, not even a dime. It's like for $9.99 a month, like, you can listen whatever you want instantly. And that's odd to me that anyone now can consider themselves an expert in something. There's certain genres that I consider that I know really, really well. It's like, I know synth pop, I know goth, I know some classic rock very well, the things that like I listened to and gravitated to when I was up. But now it's so easy for I some of my friends that have like 10-year-old kids, they're listening way broader than I ever would have at 10. And it's just mind-boggling because the kids are just getting on Spotify and Apple Music, and they're just typing, or they're going and getting playlists where it's immediately they just have built out cool playlists for them to become experts.
And do you see that as a benefit ultimately, that things are more, that people have a broader understanding of the musical spectrum?
Yes, I do. I mean, it for me, music is so important to the culture and important to how we all live and the way we see political and cultural and social movements, that I think any sorts of music fan is absolutely important. It's needed. It's needed to be music, and the love of music is so important to everything. So I can't begrudge that. I I get like a little, get off my lawn when it comes to folks that are instantly experts in things. That I don't feel that it's hard. I think it's hard for people to understand the way that maybe some of us older music listeners listen to, that we kind of got so attached to things. One of the biggest things I miss, and I was talking about this with a friend, is um album design art and reading the credits and actually having a tactile experience with your music. That was one of my favorite things. My parents were, again, like, they were very strict, but they were very cool about certain things. They would let me and my friend on album release dates go to the record store. We would buy it, and like they would drive us, or one time me and my friend took the bus because none of our parents would take us, and went to the record store. We bought an album, and then we went back to her house and sat and put it in and read as we looked at each song. I miss those moments. And I think that now people don't know about who produced it, and that maybe, Brian Eno worked with this person before in the past. I mean, again, it's always connectivity for me. But I am grateful and thankful when people listen to any sorts of music. It just makes people better, and I think it is one of those things that's great hope for society. Like, always support music in schools if you're not, and make sure that kids have music education. It is necessary for a healthy, happy society.
But then we were also talking about you're involved in some of the DEI initiatives at Sonos. Is that correct?
Yeah,
so like go on, sorry, no, go.
No, I was just going to say that we've with radio, one of the things that we thought was really interesting is allowing, again, with discovery and storytelling, letting people tell their own story through music. So we reached out to each of our cultural groups at Sonos and allowed them to curate their own record stations, from, picking their own music, recording their own voiceovers, from top to bottom. Like, these are employee produced stations. We tell them, look, we need a minimum of, giving all the behind the scenes, we need a minimum of 500 songs to make a station sound full and robust and complete. And then we let them go from there. And we've done it with our Asian, American and Pacific Islander group. We've done it with our African American group, the Latin group, women, our pride. We have tons of stations. If you flip through our site, that you can actually hear and literally hear Sonos employees talk about their favorite songs. They'll do like fun little song stories, like, hey, this song me and my mom used to ride around the car and listen to, and it made me so proud of being Filipino, and like then you go into the song and you just hear that mix. It was very important to us at Sonos and Sonos Radio that we allowed these cultural groups and different people to express their own stories.
So someone's just written in the chat, music is the international language. And I think that's what I think is fascinating about the music nerd in us gets disappointed when people don't necessarily know everything they know about one artist. But if you rewind 25 years, you knew a lot about very few artists. And if you only were able to access music that was pre-approved by labels, or it was, the diversity was pretty limited musically, I think 25 years ago. And so what I think is fascinating about now is people do have access to a wider, like just a more diverse catalog of music. So there are more perspectives. And I think that is for me, the major positive change when it comes to streaming platforms and digital radio and online radio, is the fact that you can get all these, like stuff like K-pop and stuff. It's like, if I think back to the 80s, like I would have never thought, oh yeah, like I'm super into music from other countries. It wasn't, other countries would be Europe or whatever. And that's pretty lame, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, we definitely moved the needle on like global music. I mean, global music stars are easing onto the traditional pop charts, and they're taking over, and they're taking a sense of pride in the music that they grew up with, and singing and speaking in their own language and dialects. And I think it's beautiful. I mean, it's amazing. I think we talked about like, Bad Bunny and Thames, and right now this band Khruangbin, who's like they're like the indie darlings right now, just collaborated with a bunch of like West African musicians, and it's amazing. And yes, Keith, you're dead on that music is the international language. And I think people are just now discovering that these tones and beats have always been there, but in some ways that traditional radio maybe didn't give it the exposure that it needed. And maybe streaming and on demand is the way to go for just making sure that all voices are heard.
And so the last thing I want to end on is this idea that we talked about, like storytelling. And again, we were sort of laughing about the title and your very 2022 job and stuff. But all these things and all this change, I think storytelling is the thing that artists and people who work with artists need to be most aware of. It's like, who am I and what's the story I'm telling? And so tell me a bit about this job and why it seems important to Sonos. And then I want to see if we can sort of leave people with some insights into what they can do to sort of impact their success in the music ecosystem.
I think that storytelling is essential to who someone is, what their brand is, what they want to portray to the world. On different levels, for me, I mean, on a personal level, storytelling, the way that I listen to music and the way that I express myself through music is the way that I connect with my friends and my peers. Music has been the connective tissue of probably the best friends that I've had in the city or around the world for 25 years. It's like music is a common denominator. Same with like the people I grew up with. I think for a brand like Sonos, yes, we sell speakers and we sell premium products and things like that. You're getting premium because of that. We know that you're expecting premium curation. That is why we've made a difference on doing human curation and kind of working with some of the more interesting people in music that maybe aren't the biggest names, because it's like I don't have Taylor Swift's a budget to pay Taylor Swift to come on and make music for me. But Tom York from Radiohead is a fan of Sonos. He has it in his house. He loves what it does. It connects him and it connects his family. And he was like, and we gave him free reign. We were like, make a radio station and put on whatever you want. And his station is weird. And it's like, we just let him do it. And like, he's so thankful for that, typically, I think he's a one and done, that he does something. He's come back to us 8 times. It's like, I want to refresh. I want to do a new mix. I want to do this. No one on our platform has done that. He's totally understood and grasped that he has this opportunity to present himself. Same with Erykah Badu. We have a station with her. We have a station with Dolly Parton. We're going with the people that obviously have a connection to their music and understand that this opportunity to show off their storytelling, show off their music discovery, presents them in a different sort of way. Same with any of the hosts of our shows. I think that they understand that this is an opportunity for them to show off their unique curation, their perspective, the way that they listen to music, and share it with an audience of interested, engaged listeners that are open to that. That's the one thing that we're really excited about it with Sonos, that from growing from being one of many apps to being like one of 2 top apps, that people are obviously getting it, that you can listen how you want, and you can take a little bit here and make your own like mishmash, or your own Thanksgiving plate, if you want to put it like that. But yeah, I think it's very, very important, the idea of storytelling, to not only as yourself as a person, but for me, working for a brand, that it's a great opportunity to be unique and to do very specific curation.
And like, and storytelling for newer artists, is it equally as important that
Absolutely.
Okay. Like,
you have to define yourself and create. And I hate this ethos of like, I'm going to create my own brand, but it's being true to yourself. You don't have to do it in a way that's very aggressive and like, oh my gosh, like you're hitting me with your brand. Okay, I understand that you like this and you love this, but be true to yourself at the very least. Like, that artist, I brought her up before, Thames, the African artist. She's very true to herself, that she is displaying her culture. She's singing in the way that she wants to. She hasn't like brightened herself up now that she's on the top 40 charts. She's remained true to herself, but she's not hitting you over the head with her brand. She's being herself. I think that true storytelling and true discovery and true like definition of what you like in your curation, just be true to yourself. That's for better or for worse, 25 years in this industry, I've had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things, and I've said no to a lot of them because they did not feel true to me, and they did not feel true to what I was raised with or how I liked. I didn't want to go into the traditional music industry. It just didn't feel comfortable for me. I did it for 2 months and I was like, this is not me. I don't want this lifestyle. I wanted to listen and put out music and enjoy music as me. And I think that is the only, as an artist, as a person who appreciates music, be true to yourself. Like, do what you like, enjoy what you enjoy. And I think you'll always have success.
I like that's, I think we're going to have to end there, because I don't really think there's anything else to say, because I think that's a very insightful way of looking at things. You need to put out there who you are, but you have to know who you are, and opportunities you get opportunities, but not all opportunities are the right ones.
Yeah.
And you need to know, as an artist or as someone who works in and around music, what's right for you. And it's those decisions that inform who you become as an artist or someone working in the music ecosystem. So I think like that. Go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say all the way from Nina Simone to, Missy Elliott and Badu and, you know, some of these people out there, they've always remained true to themselves, no matter if it lost them fans or they didn't reach the stratospheres that they wanted or what their labels wanted or whatnot. I think that, you know, that's the only thing you can do, I think, for yourself. And I've created my own path in music for better or for worse, but I'm going to say it's for better. It's been tough, and it's, you know, you don't get like, and because I didn't choose some paths, you don't get rich on things like this, and you don't whatever, but at least I know that I've shared my love of music with people in a way that's authentic. And I've been very, very lucky that I've had a lot of people being like, me too, or thank you for teaching me something, or A, B, or C. But that's the best I can offer. And, you know, as a fellow music fan, that's the best I can offer to everyone.
No, well, that's brilliant. I really appreciate it. I think that was really good insight and something perfect to end on. So I wanted to mention, if you want to write any contact details in the chat, if anybody needs to
Sure.
get a hold of you or where you like to connect, because I think that's the other key. If you're reaching out to people, you got to find out where they want to connect.
Very
You know,
true.
and I'm going to mention Twitter now, but I promised I wouldn't. But, you know, people are always moving to different places and connecting in different places. So you've always got to be thinking about where's the best place to reach people on their own terms, I think is another way to look
And
at it.
I will find that the inbox address for Sonos Radio. I just haven't used it in a while. I literally have them, they come to me in a folder, so I check everything when it comes in
Oh,
once
okay.
a week. But I will get that to you, to the Byta crew. And yeah, like I said, feel free to reach out, and we listen. We go through that box, and, you know, I have a great team of fellow curators and folks. And, you know, I want to also give them that shout out. It's like, you can't do stuff like this alone. The team that I work with, it's a high producing team. Like, it's only 7 of us, and we knock all of this out. And these colleagues I have are also music junkies and music fans, and we think about this, like, we really, really do. And I just want to give them a shout out because they're all brilliant.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Well, what we'll do is we'll get that email address. We'll put it in maybe with the audio link we send out this week. So yeah, but great. Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for coming. So don't forget, you'll get an audio link. You'll get a video link. Everything goes up as a podcast. Get in touch if you need anything. But thanks so much for joining us. And this is my favorite part, where I get to wave at everybody as they all disappear from the
Me
internet.
too.
All
Thank
right,
you all.
bye.
Everybody have a great day.
You too, you too. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Bye, bye, bye. I love this part. Bye, bye, bye.